I should have seen it coming when Marcus started taking calls in the parking lot. For 3 months he'd been stepping away from meetings, whispering into his phone with that practice smile he used on potential clients. But after building data flow analytics from nothing for the past 4 years, I trusted him. The morning everything fell apart started like any other. I was debugging code at 6 a.m. when Marcus strolled in at his usual 10 a.m., designer coffee in hand, looking unusually pleased with himself. "Kevin, buddy, we need to talk," he said, settling into the leather chair I'd bought for our office. "I've got incredible news. Technova Industries wants to acquire Dataflow for $15 million. My coffee mug stopped halfway to my lips. "Since when are we selling?" "Since they offered $15 million. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through email chains I'd never seen. "This is our exit strategy. You can go back to your coding caves and I can finally build something bigger." Something cold settled in my stomach. "We never discussed this. What about our 5-year plan?" Marcus's expression shifted, the friendly mask slipping. "Plans change, partner. Technova sees value in our platform and they're willing to pay premium rates." "Our platform?" I stood up slowly. "Marcus, I built 90% of that code. The algorithm, the interface, the backend architecture. And I built the business," he interrupted, his voice taking on an edge. "I found clients, secured funding, handled investor relations while you played with your precious code. Without my business development, your algorithms would be sitting in some academic journal." The words hit like a physical blow. For 4 years, I'd worked 18-hour days while Marcus networked at industry events and took clients to expensive dinners. "The deal's already in motion," Marcus continued, standing and straightening his tie. "Technova's lawyers are finalizing paperwork. We sign next week." "We sign?" I asked quietly. "Well, I sign. As majority partner, I have authority to make these decisions." He walked to his desk, pulling out champagne I hadn't noticed. "Kevin, you should celebrate. Your cut will be substantial." "My cut?" As if I was an employee receiving a bonus rather than the co-founder who'd built the technology that made Dataflow possible. "What exactly is my cut, Marcus?" He poured himself a glass, not offering me one. 20% minus legal fees. Should come out to around $2 million. Not bad for 4 years of work. $2 million. Out of $15 million. For the company I'd built from the ground up. "That's generous," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "I thought you'd appreciate it." Marcus raised his glass in a mock toast. "To Dataflow Analytics and our successful exit strategy." I looked around the office we'd shared for 4 years. The whiteboard covered in my algorithm sketches. The servers running code I'd written. The wall of monitors displaying data from the platform that started as my master's thesis. "I think I'll pass on the champagne. I need to pack my things." His smile widened. "Smart thinking. Technova wants a clean transition. They'll bring in their own development team anyway." I began collecting personal items from my desk while Marcus watched with obvious satisfaction, occasionally sipping champagne and checking his phone. "Oh, and Kevin?" He looked up with that practice smile. "Technova requested the transition be handled internally. They don't want confusion about who's responsible for what. So don't contact them directly." I nodded, continuing to pack. "Wouldn't want to complicate things." "Exactly." Marcus's phone buzzed. "Actually, that's them now." He answered with polished professionalism. "Marcus Henderson, Dataflow Analytics. Yes, excited to move forward. No complications on our end." I finished packing and headed toward the door. As I reached the threshold, I heard him laugh into the phone. "Don't worry about technical complications. I've got complete control over all intellectual property." The door closed behind me with a soft click. I walked to my car slowly, processing what had just happened. 4 years of partnership, ended with champagne and a cardboard box. But something nagged at me. Marcus's confidence seemed too rehearsed. His comment about having complete control over intellectual property didn't align with documents I remembered signing. That evening, I pulled out our business paperwork. Partnership agreements, incorporation documents, intellectual property assignments. Everything from those optimistic early days when we believed we were building something together. I found what I was looking for in a folder labeled Corporate Structure. Marcus held 51% of voting shares, I held 49%. But underneath was another document I'd almost forgotten. An intellectual property agreement we'd signed 18 months after incorporation, when I'd developed the breakthrough algorithm that became our competitive advantage. My lawyer had insisted on it, explaining that since the core technology was my creation, I needed additional protections. According to this document, I held 80% ownership of all proprietary technology and algorithms, while Marcus retained majority control of business operations. Any sale required both signatures, with technology ownership determining proceeds distribution. I read it 3 times, my heart pounding. Marcus had operational control, but I owned what made data flow valuable. Without my signature, he couldn't legally transfer the intellectual property Technova was purchasing. The next morning, I called our corporate lawyer, David Reeves. "Kevin, good to hear from you." David's voice was warm. "How's data flow?" Marcus mentioned he's selling to Technova Industries. I wanted to clarify legal requirements for that transaction. Pause. "Kevin, any sale would require both partners' signatures, especially given the IP ownership structure. Please tell me Marcus didn't represent that he could handle this unilaterally." "He did. He thinks his majority voting shares give him complete authority." David's sigh was audible. "That's not how IP law works. Voting shares give operational control, but technology ownership supersedes that for asset transfers. Without your signature, he can't sell the algorithms that make up Dataflow's core value. So if Technova is buying us for our technology, Marcus can't deliver what he's promising without your consent. Kevin, you need to contact Technova directly." I researched Technova online. They specialized in acquiring analytics startups and integrating proprietary algorithms. Exactly what I'd spent 4 years developing. I found their corporate development director and sent a careful email introducing myself as co-founder and CTO, requesting a meeting to discuss technical aspects of our platform. The response came within hours. Jennifer Walsh wanted to schedule a call immediately, seeming surprised to hear from me since Marcus had positioned himself as sole decision-maker. "Mr. Thompson," Jennifer's voice was professional but cautious over the conference call the next morning. "Marcus Henderson represented Dataflow as his proprietary business, but our technical team has questions about your analytics platform algorithms." "I'd be happy to answer technical questions," I replied. "I developed the core technology." "That's interesting." Mr. Henderson indicated he was the primary developer and business lead. "Could you clarify your role?" I pulled up incorporation documents. "I'm co-founder and CTO. I hold 49% voting shares and 80% ownership of all proprietary technology." Silence stretched for several seconds. "Could you repeat that percentage?" 80% ownership of the intellectual property. The algorithms, machine learning models, data processing architecture. All under my IP ownership. Jennifer's voice became notably formal. "Mr. Thompson, our legal team was under the impression that Mr. Henderson had full authority to transfer all assets. If that's not accurate..." "It's not accurate. Any transfer requires my signature and consent." Another pause. "We have a signing ceremony scheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Are you saying he doesn't have authority to complete this transaction?" I looked out my window, imagining Marcus in our workspace, probably on another call with Technova, still believing he held all the power. "Ms. Walsh, without my participation, you're not acquiring the technology that makes data flow valuable. Marcus can sell the company name and customer contracts, but the proprietary algorithms belong to me." "Jesus," Jennifer muttered, forgetting professional composure. "We need our legal team in this conversation immediately. Can you be available for an emergency meeting this afternoon?" "Of course. Should I bring our corporate attorney?" "Yes, definitely. And Mr. Thompson? Don't mention this to Mr. Henderson yet. We need to understand the full legal situation first." That afternoon, I sat in Technova's conference room with Jennifer, their head of legal, and 2 other executives. David sat beside me with documentation spread across the table. For an hour, David walked them through Dataflow's legal structure. The voting arrangement giving Marcus operational control. The separate IP agreement giving me technology ownership. Legal requirements for asset transfers. "Mr. Henderson never mentioned a co-founder with IP ownership," said Patricia Collins, their head of legal. "He presented himself as sole owner with full authority." "That's legally impossible," David replied. The algorithms represent 90% of data flow's assessed value. Jennifer was taking frantic notes. So what can Mr. Henderson actually sell? Company name, customer contracts, operational infrastructure. But not the core technology. Patricia looked up from documents. We'd be buying an empty shell. The technology we want belongs to Mr. Thompson. I spoke carefully. The question is whether you want to proceed with both partners involved. Jennifer exchanged glances with colleagues. What would your expectations be? I'd been thinking about this since learning the legal situation. Marcus had dismissed me as dead weight, valued my work at $2 million, tried selling the company I'd built without consulting me. Given that I own 80% of the intellectual property, I'd expect compensation to reflect that ownership percentage. Patricia calculated on her tablet. 80% of 15 million would be 12 million. Significantly different from the 2 million Mr. Henderson mentioned, Jennifer noted. The room fell quiet as they processed implications. Their deal with Marcus had become legally impossible, and the real owner wanted very different terms. We need to postpone tomorrow's signing, Jennifer said slowly. We can't complete acquisition without the actual IP owner. The next morning I was in our office at 6 a.m. when Marcus arrived at 10:15, carrying expensive champagne and wearing a new suit. His phone rang as he walked in. Marcus Henderson. I'm ready when you are. What do you mean postponed? We confirmed everything yesterday. I kept typing while his voice grew agitated. What legal complications? I have full authority. What co-founder? Kevin's just the technical contractor. Complete silence except server hums. Marcus stared at me. Ms. Walsh, explain exactly what's happening. He what? Met with your legal team? Without authorization. Marcus ended the call and walked slowly to my desk. His face had gone pale. Kevin, we need to talk. I saved my work and turned. About what? Technova said you met with them. Said you claim to own our intellectual property. I don't claim to own it, Marcus. I do own it. 80% according to agreements we signed 2 years ago. Marcus sat heavily, expensive champagne forgotten. That's impossible. I'm majority partner. I make business decisions. You make operational decisions. But you can't sell assets you don't own. I showed him the same documents I'd given Technova. Your voting shares give day-to-day control, but the IP belongs to me. He grabbed documents, scanning with growing desperation. This can't be right. I negotiated for months. Technova expects us to sign today. They expected you to sign. Now they know you can't legally transfer what they want to buy. Marcus looked up, confidence completely shattered. Kevin, we can work this out. We're partners. Yesterday you called me dead weight and valued my contributions at 2 million out of 15 million. I was negotiating. You know how deals work. I walked to the whiteboard covered in algorithm sketches. Marcus, these equations represent 2 years of 18-hour days. This code powers every data flow analysis. You were selling it without telling me negotiations were happening. But we can still make this work, desperation creeping into his voice. Technova still wants the company. I turned back. You're right. We do need to restructure. But this time ownership percentages will reflect who built what Technova wants to buy.